What's up guys, this is Eddie from Lil Soy Sauce. Welcome to the first part of 3 episodes with Lander. Today we're going to be making a lo-fi beat with Lander samples. So we're going to start off with the foundation of the lo-fi sound. It's basically ambient textures. We got this vinyl loop. We're going to drag it in and then Control D to duplicate for the 8-bar loop. Next up we have this 4-stream field recording, and that's also going to add a lot to the ambient textures. And ambience is ambience, so make sure they're not mixed in too loud. Next up we have this piano loop. It's going to be the harmonic and melodic backdrop of the beat. So we're going to drag it in, and we've got DAW cassette and isotope vinyl in the background adding some more effects. I think it's a little bit too slow, so we're going to double the speed. And then here we're just going to select the first half, and then we're going to use the warp points by double clicking any spot and basically changing the rhythm of the sample just a little bit so that it had some variation for the 8-bar loop. We're going to keep the second half intact. This warp function is one of the most important features of Ableton, and it really allows you to change up loops so they become your original material. Here's the original unwarped sample. The last thing we're going to do is pitch it down 2 semitones, just give it a darker feel. Now we're going to bring in this reversed piano sample. So of course we're going to drag it in. But instead of using just the loop, we're going to right click it, click slice to new MIDI track, and then select 1/4 note. This is going to slice the sample into little 1/4 note bits, and then we'll be able to play it with our MIDI controller. So now we've played around the samples, we've pitched one down 8 semitones, and we can create this textural loop that has some melodic qualities. One of the keys to having all these sound textures is to make sure that one individual one doesn't stand out too much. So it's okay if you can't hear this one very clearly. Next up, we're going to bring in this drum loop. So we're going to drag it in as always, but this time I want to isolate the hi-hats, so we're going to use an auto filter to block out the lows, and another EQ and filter to take out the air at the top. Here it is all together. Now we've got a drum rack loaded, so we'll drag in the kick and snare sample. So now we can play these with our MIDI controller. So let's record the pattern that I had in mind. Now let's drag the snare directly onto the grid, just to contrast with the offbeat snare that we just recorded in. I created this shaker sample by reversing its first half, so let's drag it in to create some bounce. Once again, Control D to duplicate. Let's bring in another hi-hat just to add on top of the hi-hat loop that we already sampled. So another way to glue or mix all these different sounds together is to apply a little bit of the reverb bus on all the tracks. Now we're going to add a melody line on top. We've got these 3 instruments stacked. We're going to arm all 3 tracks using Shift and then record it in. Especially if you're using a melodic sample that you haven't chopped up too much, I suggest adding your own melodic material like top lines, bass lines, etc. Speaking of bass lines, we've got a very simple synth loaded in. Let's play in the bass. In terms of the function and style of bass lines in lo-fi tracks, I think that the more movement and sort of gritty detail there is, the more it adds to the fullness of the track. So there we go, that's the final beat. To recap, we started off with some ambience, then we added in the melodic loops, added some textures on top, our own melodic material, and here it is. I want to thank Lander for providing these samples and hosting these 3 episodes. Be sure to subscribe to their channel and mine in the description, and be sure to check out the Lil Soy Sauce Artist Pick sample collection. I collected the samples used in this video, as well as my other favorites, all in one collection on lander.com. That's it from me. Enjoy the beat.